Well, a very special word of welcome to everyone at our Kernersville campus, everybody in Clemens, and brothers and sisters in King, and to everybody who is joining us online. Are you ready for some good news? Everyone is a gardener, not necessarily in the literal sense, but you've got a garden and God has plans to grow it, and in due season, you will reap. Starting a new series called How Does Your Garden Grow? Some reason it made me think back to the first little house that Ann and I owned in Atlanta, actually Tucker, Georgia, on Wildflower Lane. We love this little house, and the best thing of all was the beautiful, beautiful lawn. The people who had owned it before us were real gardeners, really understood about horticulture, and they had cultivated a beautiful, beautiful yard, lush vegetation, beautiful flowers, a luscious strawberry patch, koi ponds, barrels of goldfish and lily pads. And we just like to sit on the back screen porch and just enjoy the beauty of it. We put up a badminton net that first summer just to go out there in our bare feet in that luscious lawn, and people would come over to our house and they'd say, "Wow, what beautiful, beautiful lawn you have." And neither Ann or I is much of a gardener. And I was busy with school and she was busy teaching. And so year one, we just enjoyed all the beauty. It was so gorgeous. Enjoyed the berries, enjoyed trying to take care of those goldfish and the yard, all of the things. Year two, some weeds started popping up and I didn't know what to do about them. And the nets over the strawberries began to be invaded by birds, and a couple of goldfish died, and things were going in the wrong direction. And then in our third and final year of living there, weeds kind of started taking over. We had lily pads still in our little barrels, but no more goldfish. And the only creatures enjoying the strawberries were the birds. We had none left. They ate them down to the nub. And by the time we sold that beautiful little house with the beautiful little yard, we were just happy to hand over the keys to somebody before it looked like the whole thing would become just a weed-infested mess. Life is kind of like that, isn't it? Anything that you have that's really beautiful and wonderful, it has to be gardened and taken care of. And was thinking about my wife, who in Awakenings, the women's ministry, one morning was teaching, and she was talking about sowing and reaping, and she was talking about how God has enabled us to be able to invest our lives and sow into others and make a difference. And suddenly the old nursery rhyme came to mind, you know, Mary, Mary, quite contrary. And she said, "How does your garden grow?" And it sort of became a saying around our household. How's your garden grow? How's it going? How's your garden growing? How is it? Is it needing some weeds pulled? Does it need some fresh water? Is it getting plenty of sun? How's it going? You know, how's your garden grow? And I want us to think about that in upcoming weeks. It'll be to think about this amazing truth that God has given you a garden, a sphere of influence, and He wants real partnership with you in it. And we love the gospel of grace and love to just stay focused on all that God does. But it's important also to say that with God, there is an invitation to partner with Him in a mission. Therefore, it is a great co-mission. And I want us to start by going back to the first garden in Genesis, because there's really, in the end, two ways you can look at life. You can look at life and look around you and say, boy, I've got a lot of weeds, and I've got a lot of bare spots, and I've got a lot of lack of productivity, and then look and see other people who've got beautiful gardens growing and go, why can't I be more like that? And they've got all these beautiful flowers and they got all this wonderful produce. And you can be sort of resentful, like, I was never given anything like that. Or you can think like a farmer and say, whatever small patch I have, I can invest in it. I can sow into it, and I can be grateful for it, and something could start. And so this is the good news, is that if you are a farmer, it means that real growth is possible in you and in the mission that God has given to you. The story of gardening begins in Genesis chapter 1 at verse 28. God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the heavens and over every living thing that moves. And God said at verse 29, behold, I've given you every plant yielding seed that is on the face of the earth, and every tree with seed in its fruit, you shall have them for food. How's your garden? Let's talk about the garden, the idea of a garden. Notice this well. God blessed them, and then he said, be fruitful and multiply. With God, as we speak of often, blessing is not the reward for our productivity, it's the fuel for it. So when we start thinking like a gardener and we start thinking like a farmer, we're not saying, hey, if you'll go out there and be productive, if you'll really live out your calling, if you'll really do your mission well, then God will bless you. We're saying, no, God in Jesus Christ has blessed you. And in fact, for every Christian, it means you've been blessed with every spiritual blessing in Christ. And that knowledge and living in that you have something to give, that you have a life that is purpose and meaning. It's somehow motivational, and there's mystical power in the blessing of God. So you've been blessed. And in that blessedness, there is the receiving of God's good gifts. So note this well, God gave the seed-bearing plants. God gave the soil. God gave the water. God gave the sun. All of this is a gift. So it's absolutely imperative to all of Christian life and to all mental and emotional health that we come to this deepest, primal, foundational, theological understanding of our lives, that all of this in our life is a gift. Our life is a gift to us. We didn't make ourselves. We didn't make this world. You didn't make your garden. And so when you live like that, you live with a sense of profound appreciation. If you could just go poof and invent your garden and invent your seed, or poof and you get all your fruit, it'd be hard to ever be motivated to take care of anything. But because we know it's a gift, and the more you know it's a gift, the more precious the gift is to you, the more you're likely to care for it and tend to it. I've told you before that I got a guitar a couple years ago. When I was a kid, I played the guitar, and my guitar teacher had at the time, best guitar imaginable in the world, a Martin guitar, the famous Martin D28. And as a kid, I remember thinking, if I could ever have one of those, it'd be like being in heaven. The beauty and richness of its tone, and all of the famous and wonderful musicians who had played the Martin D28. And I, of course, thought I'll never get one. They're too expensive, and I don't deserve one. I'm not good enough. And I played the guitar all the way up through college and a little bit after that. But then I gave my guitar to my son, and I started playing the piano more. And a few years ago, I started thinking, why did I give up the guitar? I love it. I want to play again. And I had this dream come back to me. What if I could actually own a Martin guitar? And I got to thinking, I'm probably able to now. I don't deserve one. I'm not good enough, but I told my wife, that's what I want. I want it for Christmas and birthday together. That would be fine. I told her how much it would probably cost. She said, She said, it's not going to come so easy. And so what she did was kind of fun, actually. She started started for that Christmas putting some cash in a box and said, this goes towards your guitar. And then for my birthday, some cash in a box. Add this, it can go towards your guitar. Valentine's Day, a little bit more cash. Easter Day, a little bit more cash. Father's Day, a little bit more cash. And this went on. I think it went on for like a year and a half. She's like, when you have enough, you can go get your guitar. And finally it came to that point and I had enough. I mean, of course, it's all coming from our joint personal checking account, but it doesn't matter. This is about having my wife's blessing to get an expensive and wonderful thing I've always dreamt of having. And so I went and got the Martin guitar and I visited him down at Jackson Music and saw our dear sisters in the Lord and Mary Jo and Beth, and they helped me get this beautiful Martin HD 28. Oh, it's just glorious. It's just gorgeous. I just love everything about it. I drove home with that guitar in the way that I drove home when our first baby was born and I drove away from the hospital. Stay away from me, everybody. I don't want to accidentally have anybody bump up against me as I carry it in, and that guitar stays on its stand in a very special place. And every now and then I'll look and it's been moved slightly and I'll have to storm in there and say, honey, did you touch my Martin guitar? And she said, I only moved it just a couple feet to get out of the way of something like that. I haven't gotten a scratch on it yet. I was talking to Gene Francis, our worship coach. I said, I was so afraid of scratching. He said, it's going to get scratched. He said, just every musician knows it. You might as well just go ahead and let it get dinged one time. But I still can't do it because I care too much about it. My point being is that when you understand something as a gift, when you receive it as a gift, when you receive it as an undeserved gift and a luxurious gift and a wondrous gift, there's something inside of you that wants to tend to it and take care of it and polish it and make it be the best it can possibly be. Genesis 2, verse 8, the Lord God planted a garden in Eden in the east, and there he put the man whom he'd formed. And out of the ground the Lord God made to spring up every tree that's pleasant to the sight and good for food. And the tree of life was in the midst of the garden. It was a beautiful garden. Never forget, God was the first gardener. He created beauty. He ordered it. He maintained it. God was not content to let there be empty matter or disordered chaos. Instead, he brought beauty. Dorothy Frances Gurney, in a well-known poem, included these words, the kiss of the sun for pardon, the song of the birds for mirth. One is nearer God's heart in a garden than anywhere else on earth. And the Lord took the man and put him in the garden. Verse 15 says, to work it and to keep it. To work it, to serve, to cultivate it, and to protect it. And this is breathtaking if you think of it, that God would create a glorious garden and entrust it to human beings to care for it. This is more than love. This is partnership. And that parable that Jesus told about a wealthy man who left some of his treasure under the charge of his servants and came back, and one had not invested it but buried it, and the other two had invested in it, become more, has many surprising truths in it. But the most surprising is that that wealthy master was a picture of God, and that in the parable he actually entrusted servants to invest his own wealth. To think of God trusting humanity like that is kind of shocking. Mia's grandbaby, she's 2.5, and they were up for Easter. Boy, we had a fun time doing all kinds of stuff, dyeing Easter egg, big Easter egg hunt, a big extravaganza. Our home is not thoroughly child-proof for a 2.5-year-old. And it must be a little bit confusing to little Mia as to which things is she entitled to pick up and play with and squeeze and throw, and which things she's not. Stuffed animal, grab it, squeeze it, throw it, play with it. Ceramic animal sitting, bunny sitting on the shelf, you can just barely, touch that. And if it's a Martin guitar, don't even go near it. It must be a little bit confusing because normally in life what happens is it's only as you develop and you mature that you would be entrusted with things that are very precious. But God just took Adam and Eve and put them right in the middle of His world, right into the middle of the garden. How is it possible? I think it makes sense when you look a little further back in Genesis 1, verse 26, when God said, "Let us make man in our own image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion." That it is the fact that He made human beings in His own image. The imago Dei, the image of God in us, is so remarkable that God saw humanity, though we are most certainly the creatures and not God, He saw us as God-like, and therefore with a sense of calling and capacity to make a difference. Let's make human beings in the image of God, the triune God is saying. And so it's not to chimpanzees or rats or snakes that He entrusts the garden, but to the human being. So let that make your jaw drop and hold on to it and wonder at it. God, the creator of all that exists, wants to partner with you. How's your garden? That's the garden. But think about this, how's your garden grow? Let's think about growing, because to have a garden is to be designed for growth and designed to help release growth. God made the land, He made the sea, He made the soil, He made the sun, He made it all. But then in partnership, the plan is for increase, for fruit to come, and inside the fruit for there to be seed. John 15:5, Jesus said, "I'm the vine, and you're the branches. Whoever abides in me and I in him, he it is that bears much fruit." It's the plan of God. He said at verse 8, "My Father is glorified by this, that you bear much fruit." I have to confess I've struggled a little bit with the idea of fruitfulness. And as we talk about fruitfulness, it very quickly, if we don't watch it, can fall into a kind of works righteousness, can't it? Don't ever forget God blessed and then said, "Be fruitful." We got to keep that order, or else it can become some sort of effort to earn our way into the favor of God. It must never be that. But I always struggled with just even how to appreciate and walk in the fullness of just being fruitful and enjoying the fruitfulness that comes with our life with God and when God does good things through you. I had so much false humility. Maybe some of you struggle with that. The idea that I was supposed to always be less and God be more, to me sometimes meant that it couldn't even be celebrated when there was fruit. And so I was always a whole lot of, "Oh, shucks, it's all God." I think I've told you before the first conversation that I had with my predecessor, Pastor Dick Little. He told me a joke. It was a little on the edge of being irreverent, but he meant it as a compliment. He was asking about where I had been serving at my church in Durham before coming here. And I told him about the Precious Church and how God had taken this small church and had grown it, and how God had done these wonderful things, And he said, "Well, yeah." He said, "But you've been a partner with God." And I said, "Oh, shucks." I said, "Well, God." And he told me this joke. He said, "There once was a man who took over an old dilapidated cottage on some acreage of land. And he spent 2 years renovating it, fixing it up, painting it, putting on a new porch, cultivating all the land around it. And one day the pastor came over and saw it and said to the parishioner, said, 'Brother, you and God sure have done a marvelous work here.'" And The parishioner said, yeah, you should have seen it when God had it to himself. You see what I'm saying? It bordered right on the irreverent, but he meant it, Pastor Little meant it as a compliment to me to say, don't just only say, oh, shucks. You've been in a partnership with God and the good things happen. This is part of the beauty of what God's done here by putting Adam and Eve into a garden and said, you're a part of this. You know, the biblical writers are not embarrassed of the notion of bearing fruit. I mean, if you just look at some story like David, who is young and he goes to the battlefield and he overhears it being said what would be done for the one that defeats Goliath. 1 Samuel 17:25. I always love this. The men of Israel said, have you seen the man who's come up? Surely he has come up to defy Israel. And the king will enrich the man who kills him with great riches and will give him his daughter and make his father's house free in Israel. Verse 26, and David said to the men who stood by, what? What shall be done for the man who kills this Philistine and takes away the reproach from Israel? And they told him, it's all right. He was motivated by serving and honoring God, David was, but it wasn't wrong that he was paying attention to the fruit of the victory. When God sent the spies into Canaan to spy it out so that he meant for the people to get courage so they could go in and take the promised land. And so when he sent them in, this is what happened in Numbers 13:17. Moses sent them to spy out the land of Canaan and said to them, go up to the Negeb, the hill country, and see what the land is. Just see what it is. See if it's good for growing things. See what it's like. And whether the people are strong or weak, few or many. And verse 19, whether the land they dwell in is good or bad. Is it fertile? Is it good? Go see. I mean, God knew. He wanted them to go see, though. And whether the land's rich or poor and there are trees in it or not, then be of good courage and bring some of the fruit. The time was the first grapes. And at verse 23, they came to the valley of Eshcol and cut down from there a branch with a single cluster of grapes. And they carried it on a pole between the two of them and brought some pomegranates and figs. It's kind of God's plan. It's like, bring back some of the fruit of the land so that people could get a vision for how fertile it is and how productive their lives could be. So there's a kind of doing the work because of the fruit that's in front of you. That's kind of therapeutic language and recovery, and saying, we'll often say, do the work, and it'll work if you work it, because sometimes you got work to do, right? I mean, it might be that there's some tough conversations that you need to have, maybe with a spouse. But you got to think about the fruit of it, because if you've ever enjoyed something as sweet as harmony in a relationship, you know that fruit is delicious, right? Or maybe you need to do the work of getting to the roots of shame in your life, and it requires getting in touch with some wrong beliefs so they can be replaced with the truth. And it's not easy to confront lies and foundational strongholds that need to be overturned. Sometimes you got to do the work. But if you've ever tasted anything as sweet as living shame-free for even a moment, living instead of being afraid of being rejected, living confidently because you're positive that you've been accepted in Jesus Christ, then you know it's delicious to live like that. Think about the fruit. Or maybe your garden's your workplace and you need to learn some things and develop some professional skills, and it might be hard. It might make your brain hurt, and you might be an old dog needing to learn some new tricks, and it's not easy or comfortable. But think of the fruit that can come when you learn to do something and do it well. It's crazy. I told you last summer, if you were with us, I chronicled the growing of tomatoes. My precious sister-in-law, who has a green thumb, she just said, there's nothing like going in your own backyard and picking a tomato in the middle of the summer. And she said that, I thought, I'm going to grow my own tomatoes. And I chronicled, if you want to see it, in the pastorallen.org blog, you can see the chronicling of it, that it was just one difficulty after the other. First, it was a drought, and I had to go out of town to get some way for people to water my tomatoes. And then when they finally started growing, there was this blossom end rot that started happening, and I had to read about that and put some calcium down into the soil and had to spray them with this stuff. It was crazy, and it solved that. And then along came the green hornworm that was eating everything, and the literature said you had to hand pluck them. So I'm out there plucking green worms off my tomatoes, and just about the time I thought I'm getting some good tomatoes, the remnants of a hurricane passed through the Piedmont, and it knocked over all my plants. But I stuck with it, and by August, I was having some good tomatoes. They were really good. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I might actually plant some more this summer. I don't know. But I'm saying thinking about the fruit will sometimes be enough. And God's put you into a garden. Think about the fruit. There might be some work to do, but God's got a plan for growth. So life's like a garden, and you got a sphere of influence, a garden you're in, and God's designed it to really grow, to bear fruit, and it's unique to you. How does your garden grow? What is your garden in this season? I think it's the question that arises in the heart of every young person. What am I supposed to be doing with my life? And then as we grow in the Lord, seasons change, and we're aware we need to be sensitive to His calling. And I think that the story of Adam and Eve in the first garden at least conveys this to us, that your garden is where God places you. We can spend a lot of time, too much time, thinking about all the places we might rather be, or other gardens that look better than ours, but I think we're far more productive, and it's a far better enterprise to just start sowing where you are. I was thinking about the lottery. I'm not really for the lottery because it's kind of like a tax on the poor. I don't think it's some big grievous sin if you, for fun, go buy a lottery ticket. And if you do buy one and win big, we will accept your donation of 10% or more of your earnings. But I'm not for it because the people that do it are mainly those that live in the poorest zip codes. People in the poorest zip codes in our country spend on average $600 a year on the lottery, 33 times more than anybody in the upper income level spend on it. You know, people that could at least afford to do so. But you know, I did the math. If instead of playing the lottery to the tune of $600 a year, if a person started at age 18 investing $50 a month in the stock market at the average return of 10%, which has been average over time for the stock market, by age 70, if they'd done that rather than playing the lottery, they'd have $1.1 million. You know, just start where you are. You know, don't get paralyzed by trying to always figure out. I mean, He just put them in the garden. He said, tend to this. Anything can happen if you're a gardener. The 2015 film, Matt Damon played an astronaut named Mark Watney on a mission to Mars in this sci-fi movie. And while there, a violent dust storm on Mars forces the crew to abort their mission, and during the evacuation, Watney is struck by debris and he's presumed to be dead. So the crew leaves and he wakes up alone on Mars and realizes pretty quickly the bleak truth is that he is there, nobody knows he's alive, and it would take years before rescue would be possible, and he's going to run out of food. So he realizes he's going to have to do the unthinkable. He's going to have to grow food on Mars. It's kind of fascinating. So he takes Martian soil, fertilizes it with waste, creates a makeshift greenhouse and takes a stash of potatoes that were supposed to be reserved for Thanksgiving dinner, carefully controls the temperature, moisture, air pressure, develops an irrigation system using water that he makes from rocket fuel, and against all odds, the potatoes start to grow. Damon's character is keeping this video log of all he's doing, and at some point, on one day, he recorded this. At some point, everything's going to go south on you, and you're going to say, this is it, this is how I end. Now, you can either accept that or you can get to work. That's all it is. You just begin. You do the math, you solve one problem, you solve the next, and if you solve enough problems, you get to go home. Is this sort of a powerful image, like of just start sowing where you are? Work it and keep it, the language in Genesis said. To work the garden is a word in Hebrew that means to cultivate. It's used elsewhere for manual labor and for worship and service of God. And the second word, to keep it, is shamar. It means to watch and guard and protect, a strong word used of priests guarding the tabernacle and used of God's own protective care for us. So Adam's task and ours, it was not just agricultural, it was priestly and worshipful. He was a servant king and a guardian priest, and he was put in that garden to nurture life and to resist disorder. Nurture life and resist disorder. And you are a gardener, and you've been put on this earth to nurture life and to resist disorder. How does your garden grow? I just want us to kind of keep revisiting this image of the garden in coming weeks. And maybe we should say at the out front, one of the most fascinating things about it is that we're gardening, but God's doing the growing. 1 Corinthians 3:6, I planted, Apollos watered, Paul said, but God gave the growth. So neither he who plants nor he who waters is anything, but only God who gives the growth. So God gives the land, the seed, the sun, the water, the soil. It's all gift. And we work it. We work it and we keep it. We cultivate it and we nourish it and we protect it. And God brings the growth. There's something fascinating about this and encouraging to us that this first Adam failed at his task, but God had a plan, that there would be another Adam. Paul called him in 1 Corinthians 15:45 the last Adam. The first man, Adam, became a living being. The last Adam, a living spirit. Adam was made in the image of God. He was put into the garden as a human being to cultivate it and protect it. But instead of guarding, he let the serpent's lies enter in. And instead of tending it, he stepped back in shame. And this was the problem of humanity. We always had a hard time tending our gardens. Sin and shame would keep us from the task. And everyone was born in that first Adam, everybody born in sin, and God had a plan to send a second Adam into another garden. It's fascinating just this week as we're reflecting back over the wondrous celebration of Easter and remembering that when Mary went to find and care for the body of Jesus at the tomb and saw that he wasn't there, she thought someone taken the body away, and she's all concerned and crying. In John 20:15, Jesus said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping? Whom are you seeking?" And the text said, supposing him to be the gardener, she said to him, "Sir, if you've carried him away, tell me where you've laid him." Supposing him to be the gardener. And in beautiful and ironic ways, Jesus was the new gardener, the new Adam, the better and truer gardener, able to garden in a way that Adam wasn't able to. He's the gardener of your life. He's pulling weeds and he's offering living water and he's watching over you, and he's the gardener of this new garden. The first garden, Eden, was a place where it was teeming with life and beauty, but through Adam's sin, death entered in. But the new garden, that garden in which the tomb of Jesus was the place of death, where they'd placed the dead body of the crucified Lord Jesus. But with the resurrection, what happened in that garden with his own sinlessness ushered in life. He's the real gardener. The first gardener, Adam, the first human, fell into sin. But in that second garden, the garden of the tomb, God's Son arose. And this second garden is so much more beautiful and better because anyone who receives Christ will never, ever be put out of the garden. You are a gardener. You're a farmer. And beloved, you're here. And whatever patch of ground, whatever sphere of influence, whatever way that God calls you, whatever place He puts you, no matter how big or how seemingly small, is vital. How's your garden grow? Your garden grows because the real gardener has come alongside of you to empower you. So sow where you are. Take care of what you've been given and get ready because in due season you will reap. And that's the gospel.